Greetings from the Blessed Michael McGivney Pilgrimage Center in New Haven, Connecticut, and happy feast of Blessed Michael McGivney. Today, August 13th, 2021, is the inaugural feast of Blessed Michael McGivney. He was beatified, founder of the Knights of Columbus, in the fall of last year, and today we are celebrating his feast. As part of our celebrations, we have with us the family of the miracle child, the child that was healed in utero that led to Father McGivney's beatification. Dad, Father Daniel Schachle, is with us. He is a Knights of Columbus general agent, and he has graciously offered to share with us his thoughts about Father McGivney, a 19th century priest, what his example and what his vision mean for the church in the 21st century. So, without ado, I give you Daniel Schachle. Daniel, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Peter. Thank you. Blessed McGivney, a man for his time and ours. This is my reflection on a man that I consider a personal friend, a mentor, a man who linked himself to God, who transcends time and circumstance, a man who lifted me to be someone that I was not. I am an ordinary man and a father. I'm not a theologian or a churchman. But I do try to do my best to stay within God's will, no matter what the risk or the cost. But this friend of mine has ridden with me in my car for years as I carry out my mission as a field agent with the Knights of Columbus. I reflect on him doing the same work, riding horseback through the hills of Connecticut, looking for Catholic families to protect. And this image of him drives me on. It has from my first day of working for the Knights of Columbus. If I could sum up the Knights of Columbus, I could do it no better than Isaiah 1:17. Learn to do good, seek justice, correct oppression, bring justice to the fatherless, and plead the widow's cause. So I guess the first question is, what do our times have in common with Father McGivney's? Blessed McGivney and his family struggled with anti-Catholic Protestantism in his times. But our times aren't too much different, as we'll discover. His parents grew up in a Catholic cultural immersion in Ireland and then found themselves in a radically anti-Catholic environment here. I have so much respect for all the Catholic immigrants that came to this country, and in spite of all of the hardships and the easy ways out, they persevered and defended the faith and passed it on down to us. And they did this in spite of the comfort they could have gained by letting go of their Catholic faith. Blessed McGivney didn't have an easy road. He faced apathy in creation of our order. He faced apathy from his own parishioners, from the priests of his diocese. But he never lost the faith that he was doing God's work, building something essential to the life of the family. We face apathy today as well, sometimes in our parishes, in our communities, even in our own council halls. But if we call on Blessed McGivney to pray for us to persevere as he did, our work will bear fruit today and long after we're gone. I think in some ways we have to acknowledge that we share the confusing times of the Irish immigrants. Most of us grew up in an age when we swam with the current of a Judeo-Christian culture. The Catholic Church, along with strong Protestant religions, pointed us towards good philosophy, good logic, even if it wasn't God in name or Jesus Christ in name, we were pointed towards those principles. That current of culture in just under a half a century has slowed to a crawl and then a rapid reversal. I think it's important that many of us realize that now our children grow up in a much different culture than we did. They face much of the confusion that those immigrants in the late 1880s faced. But it's no less costly for them to keep their faith than it was for those Irish immigrants. In Father McGivney's 1882 letter to the pastors of Connecticut that can be found in the book Faith and Fraternalism, A History of the Knights of Columbus, we could hear Blessed McGivney's concern for the souls of his parishioners. He wanted to steer these parishioners away from the secret societies of the day. The letter can be found on page 19 of Faith and Fraternalism, and Father McGivney says, "Our primary object is to prevent our people from entering secret societies by offering the same or better benefits. Secondly," he added, "our object is to unite the men of faith throughout the Diocese of Hartford, that we may thereby gain strength to aid each other in time of sickness and to render pecuniary assistance to the families of deceased members." His hope was that every single parish in his diocese would have a Knights of Columbus council to call its own. He hoped that no widow or orphan would ever again be left destitute by the loss of a breadwinner. Today it goes without saying that we should share the same. Our goal shouldn't be for every parish to be claimed by a council, but that every parish and every parish priest have a council of their own. And those councils should have at their forefront two aims. And these were the aims of Father McGivney. Keep Catholic families from leaving our faith to enter a different type of faith, which we'll discuss more in a minute. Unite the men of our diocese with the men of the larger church to render financial aid to families. Blessed McGivney was called into the insurance business. And he was called into the insurance business by love for his parishioners and the families he served. And he called me to it in much the same way. I and the agents of the Knights of Columbus consider ourselves McGivney's men, and we try to continue as he did, riding the countryside, trying to find Catholic families to protect. This action is also outlined on page 35 of Faith and Fraternalism, where the author says that the Supreme Knight and the officers took care of the social dimensions of the order. The author then goes on to tell us that Blessed McGivney was aware of the value of these social dimensions of the order, but he spent his time and energy promoting the insurance feature. And to quote, underlying his emphasis on business was his pastoral concern for the social and financial security of the family. Blessed McGivney was determined to instill a sense of responsibility in the Catholic wage earners in Connecticut. For this, he would draw on his own experience watching his widowed mother take care of a large family. There are many ways we can accomplish this, but the Knights of Columbus is different. Bishop McMahon, the Bishop of the Diocese of Hartford in 1885, also found on page 20 of Faith and Fraternalism, said that recognition of lay organizations is not given indiscriminately, even though the organization is comprised of Catholics. She, the church, has a right to expect that the members of these societies shall show themselves conspicuous by their loyalty towards her principles, their respect for her clergy, and their fidelity to Catholic methods and advancements of their ends. Father McGivney provided a way for us to do just that. And the importance of that can't be stressed enough. As it's put to us in the book of James, religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless as this, to look after widows and orphans in their distress and keep oneself from being polluted by the world. There are many activities in the secular world that Catholic families can be engaged in, and there are many companies in the secular world that Catholics can engage with to advance their ends. But there are not many options, even in this day, to do so with Catholic means. Blessed McGivney provided us with a way 140 years ago to advance our ends using Catholic means in the Knights of Columbus. We can do so without allowing our money to be co-opted and used by large secular corporations or organizations that actually fight to undermine the Church's teachings. Blessed McGivney was tireless and he was focused in his efforts to create an insurance company by Catholics for Catholics with Catholic values. Blessed McGivney surely knew the words of 1 Timothy 5:8 concerning the eternal nature of this obligation. But if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for the members of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Catholics needed a Catholic means to this end. So what was the problem with the secret societies, and why does it matter today? And why is the Knights of Columbus the answer? Our Lady of Good Success in the church-approved apparitions to Venerable Mother Mariana de Jesus Torres in Quito, Ecuador, in the 17th century warned of the control of the culture in our times by yet-to-be-founded Freemasonic associations. She said of the times surrounding the 20th century that, quote, "The passions will erupt and there will be a total corruption of customs, for Satan will reign almost completely by means of Masonic sects." She said many things in this apparition, and they warrant further study by you, but it's beyond the scope of our discussion here. The Church first condemned secret societies in 1738. Pope Clement declared they are not consistent with either civil or canon law because they harm both the peace of the civil state and the salvation of souls. The assertions of Clement were later reinforced by Leo XIII, Benedict XV, and Pius VII. The latter said in his encyclical, "We should condemn them in such a way that it's impossible to claim exemption from the condemnation." These are pretty heavy, harsh words. We have to ask ourselves, what was the problem with these societies? They say they aren't a religion, although they have altars and liturgies. On the surface, they seem harmless because they do so much good. So what was it about these seemingly benign organizations that drew the ire of the magisterium? The postmodern relativism that we live in today can likely trace its roots back to the principles of these organizations. And it shows the truly prophetic nature of our Holy Fathers and of the Blessed Lady. The liturgy and the culture of these organizations are aimed to promote treating every religion as equal and as equally true. This obviously leads the mind to the conclusion that if all are true and equal, then all are equally worthless. Why adhere to a worthless set of codes given to you by your ancestors when you can easily make up your own or adopt someone else's? The message here from these organizations is, do you believe in a higher power? If so, then go do good and don't talk about who that higher power is because other people think differently and you might offend them. This can be easily seen as a not so subtle attack on religion in general. Firstly on the souls of the members and then on those to whom they spread the error. We're seeing this now play out in our culture. As you and your children try to live the gospel and evangelize, you're now met with things like, "That's your truth, not my truth." "Stop trying to force your truth on me." The basis of this is these organizations try to create a brotherhood without a father. A brotherhood without a father is an obvious lie. A brotherhood made up of people who argue and are uncertain about their who their father is means nothing but dysfunction and chaos. We've seen this play out in some of the greatest tragedies in human history, some of the most grandiose being communism and Marxism across the world. We can hear the mantra of these societies growing ever louder in what our now anti-Catholic culture would call giving up outdated notions of order to just be a good person. You're expected to accomplish this by acknowledging that your old values are no better than their self-invented values. Our God is a God of order. Like a good father, He loves us. And He loves us enough to give us an order to nature to follow. We do have the free will to deny God and His order. However, when we do that, we have to make up our own set of rules for the universe. And in this situation, the difference between us and God is that God doesn't think He's us. Further, what does being a good person even mean? Just like religions, if you make up your own definition and everyone's definition is equal, then all definitions are equally worthless. Our culture has now gone so far as to think we can define for ourselves what a family is, what the elements of human life are. We think we can decide for other creations of God, like my son Michael, what a quality of life is, or what a useful life is. We now even think we can define for ourselves if we were created to be a man or a woman. There is no truth anymore, just my individual truth, and that truth is supreme. Blessed McGivney understood that you can't build a culture, not the church, not any type of organization, if your main core value is the diversity of values. If the only definition of sin going forward is reduced to a violation of one's own moral code or offending someone else for challenging theirs, we will be doomed to continue to struggle holding ourselves together. I think Blessed McGivney is pointing us to a hard truth that's been a teaching of the church from the beginning. The key to a strong church is a strong, well-formed family with full reliance on God's providence in this life and in the next. The devil is afraid of the Holy Family, and the devil is deathly afraid of your family becoming holy. He will do everything in his power to use the thorns of the flesh to drag us men, our wives, our children, and our culture away from God into the cesspool of his diversity of opinions and gods. I think Blessed McGivney is calling us to the same battle he had, to go after, to actively seek the young family awash in our culture, to pull them in, and with God's help, keep them in the faith. We are to be a lighthouse that says the truth of the Catholic faith and the lives of all of God's children are still important. Important enough to suffer persecution for, to be passed over for a promotion for. It's still important enough for us to take up our cross and follow Him, just as multiple millions have done before us. Blessed McGivney believed that charity began at home, then it extended to your parish, and then to the community. He was able to see himself in Alfred and his own family and the Downs family. He was able to see his church flock in the value of Chip Smith's soul. He was able to see the value of a human life in the personhood of my son, who the world would say has no quality of life. He was able to see people as both physical and spiritual. because we're all brothers and sisters with the same Father. He was able to see that each person that he met was in a fight for their eternal soul. He was also able to see that each person he met has been wounded at some point in this battle. And he refused to let anyone die on that battlefield alone. The founder of the Knights of Columbus, I believe, wanted us to be corpsmen. Corpsmen that watch each other's backs, that go out into the world to find the suffering and the hurt and the poor and bring them into the field hospital of the church so that they can finally find joy, peace, and freedom. The biggest thing that jumps out to me about Blessed McGivney and his passion for souls is that he saw the need to strengthen the family and help them keep the faith of our fathers against terrible odds. The Knights of Columbus gives young families the place for a man to have real support, have his iron sharpened for leading his family when he gets home, to have the courage to boldly teach his children to say, I believe in Jesus Christ and his one true church. I believe in the Eucharist. I believe in the sacraments. I believe in the value of my fellow human beings, born, unborn, young, and old. It gave young men a place to be reinforced, to find strength, hope, and reassurance, even if some of their loved ones had fallen away. The fight against postmodern relativism today is turning squarely towards the family, even attacking it in the sacred space of the womb. In the same way that Satan attacked religion, he now goes after the family and even the right to live. His new lie says, we love the family, whatever your definition of family is. Just like the attack on religion, if all definitions of family life are equal, then all are equally worthless. Why should a child cleave to their family? Why shouldn't they now go to someone else's definition of a family? Perhaps a tribe where everyone thinks that you should be able to define everything for yourself as your own common value. Satan's lie about human life says we want all human beings to live happy and healthy, long lives as long as that life fits our definition of what life is. So what was it that was taking these men away to these secret societies? It was the postmodern relativism in its early stages that we experience today. And it's even now present in many political movements. Humanity has always been tribal in a sense. The need to join a tribe was necessary for the survival of the human race. They were needed for mutual protection and promotion. We still see this today, not only in families and fraternities, but places in politics, which seem to replace the loyalties once given to family with loyalties given to ideology. Blessed McGivney saw this human need for groups and tribes and fraternal organizations, and he saw how he could harness it to cure the societal ills of his day. As our culture becomes more and more hostile to the timeless truths of the Catholic faith, I think Blessed McGivney realizes our order is needed again today as a safety net for families. From a purely human perspective, it's possible that we were founded in the late 1880s just for the needs of those parishioners of the Hartford Diocese. Is it also possible that our omnipotent God knew that we would need 140 years to grow, so we could be a formidable force for the protection of Catholics today as well? God hears the cry of the poor, the family attacked, and his child in the womb, and the rich and powerful he sends away empty. Blessed McGivney, from a position of very little worldly power, relied firstly on divine inspiration, on the strength of God, then on his own talents, and on the talents of those around him, and on their diligence. The people he surrounded himself with literally pushed the Catholic family up on its feet in the United States of America. Today, our obstacle isn't Protestantism. Today, it's evangelical atheism and postmodernism. Today, it's the religion of many gods, of many values, of many personal opinions. It is, as Paul put it in 1 Romans, giving up the worship of the Creator for the worship of man and other creations. If we read Romans 1, it describes our current state as predicted when we turn away from God. Is it possible that Blessed McGivney has returned to the Catholic Church at this time to inspire us to protect and hold up the Catholic family on its feet through this, our unique epic? Why did he even think it was his job, and why should we think it was ours? I think, first of all, we should ask the question, when we see something wrong, why do we think it's not our job? If those original members of the Knights of Columbus would have told Blessed McGivney, sorry, Father, that keeping people in the faith thing or protecting their finances thing, that's your job, I just make spoons, where would the Knights of Columbus be today? I think the obvious answer is non-existent. These men that they called knights knew that they owed a tribute to God, to their family, and to their country in that order. Father McGivney wanted men to stand together, to take up space, to show their staunch Catholicity in the face of opposition from a culture, and to show their family what their family's true treasure was, and that was their Catholic faith. He wanted them to start in their own home, spread the protection of the faith and the family throughout the culture. He was a man of action, moved by his love of the body of Christ in the domestic church. He was a heart of charity that poured himself out completely for God's children. Though he was a young man, he was, in the truest sense, a father to the flock that God entrusted him with. He relied on laymen to help in this family ministry, and the good pastors of the church today must be able to rely on us to help them in their ministry to families. They have a challenge before them as great as he did. They deserve our love and unfailing support. We should be fighting back with love as Father McGivney did. During the time of Blessed McGivney, Catholics experienced terrible acts of violence towards the faith. Churches were being burnt down, as they are in Canada right now. Statues were being toppled and defaced, as they are right now. Catholic values were being shoved to the margin of the culture, as they are right now. The Irish were dehumanized, as other populations have been, and as the unborn are right now. Ideas concerning collectivist economic and civic systems were all becoming the rage, as they are right now. Pandemics were raging, as they are right now. Poverty was a problem, as it is right now. Modernism, atheism, and relativism are on the rise, as they are right now. Families were being torn apart by the culture, as they are right now. The world was full of the rise then, as it always has been, and as it is now, with evil and sin, pride and envy, greed and avarice. During his time period, the eugenicists were developing their killing machines, preparing for the deaths of hundreds of millions, and we in America have built on that. All the problems, what did Blessed McGivney do? He realized that where sin abounds, grace has the opportunity to abound all the more. He didn't go protest at the state capitol. He didn't go protest in Washington, D.C. He stood right where he was in his community. He stood in the courtrooms of Connecticut and said, kids like Alfred Downs mattered. He stood in the prison not once but over and over again because the soul of Chip Smith mattered. He stood in the cold Connecticut winters without a coat because he would give his away. He stood high in the saddle riding through Connecticut looking for families to protect before they caved to the pressure and he lost them out of his flock. He stood with self-sacrifice and he stood with virtue, not comfort and compliance. He was a true man. I can find nothing in my readings of Father McGivney seeking comfort, always seeking the good of another, always seeking the good of a soul. He was trying to be a good father. He stood against the forces trying to scatter his flock. He did so by pulling the young families in close to him in the Knights of Columbus, in a brotherhood, not a fatherless brotherhood, but a brotherhood with the same Father, God our Father. He went after the go-ahead young men of Connecticut and asked them to stand with him. We can say young men because if we do our research, the first 5 Supreme Knights of the Knights of Columbus were under 40 years old. They were men in the years of providing for their families that Father McGivney wanted strengthened to keep them in the faith and keep their children in the faith and keep the wolf away from the door. He wanted the families locked arm in arm to build a strong cable of faith and finance to guard one another. He wanted enough members to start a Catholic insurance company. And he was deliberate and he was relentless in this goal. Now, I certainly haven't been perfect in my life carrying out these values and probably never will be, and you are probably thinking the same thing. But I think Father McGivney, Blessed McGivney, coming back to us at this time is a call to all of us for conversion so we can stand like he stood against the enemies of truth, against the enemies of family, against the enemies of life, because all of these are ultimately the enemy of our shared God and Father. There's a reason that we're called knights after all, isn't there? Blessed McGivney is still looking for us, the faithful Catholic families of America. God is calling us once again to embrace his virtues of self-sacrifice for his fellow man, to magnify the Lord as he did, which caused him to become a beacon of light for his times. The communion of saints is one of the greatest gifts that we've been given as Catholics. These people are the gold medalists of striving for heaven. Jesus Christ, risen from the dead, paves the way for us all, and these saints show us how it can be done. They are affirmations of the holiness of God and that every path doesn't necessarily lead to him. We can, just as we should with the Gospels, plug our lives into their situations. Am I being Peter, cutting off a servant's ear and then going and shrinking in fear? Am I being John, silent at the foot of the cross, no matter the fanfare? Am I being St. Dominic? Am I being St. Thomas Aquinas? Am I being Blessed Miguel Pro? Am I being Blessed Michael McGivney, who, like St. John, the Beloved, followed the cross, carried his cross, sat with the suffering, and consoled the bereaved. Michael McGivney poured his life out completely to the end for the faith and the family that he was entrusted with shepherding. This is a man for our times. And the book, Those Who Remain, by Michael Hoffett said, hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. We are blessed to be entering what appears to me to be harder times for the church and Western civilization in general. I say we're blessed because the goal of all of us should be to be saints. It seems to me that great saints always have the ability to inspire courage in others. We think back through history, many of them seemingly held back the onslaught of cultural error or political power almost single-handedly. Blessed McGivney did that. He changed the world. This courage to act leads to more saints to come behind them, and humanity rises. I'm reminded of the courage of St. Ambrose, who in an apostolic fashion rebuked the Emperor Theodosius for his lack of respect for life. The holiness and courage of this bishop inspired St. Monica to pray for her son to return from his life of debauchery. The courage of St. Ambrose to be all in for Jesus Christ also called to that son the man who would become the doctor of the church, St. Augustine, who also called many others to sainthood. Can anyone give me one reason why our councils, including our chaplains and our wives and our sons and our daughters, can't be pods of saints like these? Give me one reason why we can't find young families to help them become saints and have them help us become saints. Uniforms come and go. Council halls come and go. Pancake breakfasts come and go. Blessed McGivney doesn't want us to waste our labors on things of this earth, although they all be good things. He wants us, like an undisturbed compass, to have our needle of charity always pointing at the eternal. This is what I believe Blessed McGivney wanted. Families bound into that strong cable of faith and mutual protection in the face of an anti-Catholic culture. And a unity that once formed doesn't only turn inward, but it shines out like a lighthouse. It evangelizes the world through the embrace of the truth of our faith and the embrace of our fellow man with the love and charity of our common Father. I have, as one would naturally wonder, when I lay down and when I get up, in all humility, why Blessed McGivney, and by extension, God the Father, would pick such an imperfect instrument as me or our family to use as one of the vessels of this rebirth of the Knights of Columbus. I'm reminded of the parallels between his family size and ours, between his passion for faith and the finances of the faithful and ours. But I will leave that to God to reveal to you and to us all, frankly. It would be too much of a stretch for me to assume the mind of God on this matter. But I do know with every fiber of my being that all of these things I've discussed are definitely why he and St. Joseph are so important today. And I know they are calling everyone watching this to be a vessel of that renewal as well. They are calling tonight to awake this sleeping giant. Their call is for every man to be a great father and a great saint just as they were. It's a small price to pay in tribute to our risen King. As we go about asking men to join our order, we should tell them that the Knights of Columbus endeavors to make a man a better Catholic, a better husband, a better father. And we're here to take care of each other's families when we're gone. And we give opportunities to teach our children to give back. That's the recruiting message, to bring the young families into our order. Blessed McGivney, pray for us to will it. Pray for us to have your courage and the courage of the saints to do it. May God bless you.